Yes, Patrick Mahomes can be the MVP. Yet again, the question is, can he be the MVP of another Super Bowl coming up today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. It is camp week. Welcome to it. We're brought to you today by Gametime, where you can just download the app, create yourself an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off of your first ticket purchase right there. Terms do apply. We have a great show for you. Hope that you're excited, because I'm excited. Camp is going to begin this week. We'll see Patrick Mahomes, the quarterbacks, the rookies here in about 24 hours. And I hope that you're looking forward to it, because we certainly are. But we got to run down Patrick himself, as well as everything surrounding it right now. You have been here before. If you haven't, if you're just getting into football season, you've never seen us. Chris and I have covered this team for going on 8 years on this show and roughly 13 beyond that. We are the original hosts. You can find him at Chiefs Corner. It is KCChiefsCorner.com. You can find me at NFL33.com, at RGRFootball.com, and at Rogue APC. That's where the Athletic Matrix is. We appreciate you joining us. It's been a very long time. Make sure you like, sub, hit the bell here on YouTube, because that's where we start. We are free and available on every platform every day for free.
And I just want to say, if you guys like any of the salary cap stuff, I have covered every single position. I've still got cornerback and safety, and I think the special teams later to hit this week that will be on Chiefs Corner. But I broke down the salary cap per position over at Chiefs Corner. Go check that out. Lots to talk about when we talk about the QBs. First things first, you talk about Mahomes. He is a guy that can win MVP this season, and we'll see. He's going to have a better cast than I think he's had around him for a couple of seasons. But the other thing is you look around the NFL, and this just came out a couple hours before we're recording this, I believe. ESPN just put out its rankings of QBs in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is number one. That should not be a big surprise. The interesting thing to me, though, is they put out something on the tight ends as well. Travis Kelce was number one. I think his lowest vote was 5. Patrick Mahomes is number one. His lowest vote is 2. Don't know who put out a vote for him to be number one, or to be number 2, I guess. But yeah, it's a little bit different.
I'm guessing somebody in Cincinnati. I could be wrong.
Hey, maybe. I mean, you look at QB1 in Kansas City, it is QB1 in the NFL. That is the reality, and most people have already come around to that. I know there are people that want to argue that. I don't think there's an argument to be made at this point.
No, I don't think so either. It's whether it's a male athlete of the year, the award shows, which a lot I think are post actual evaluation, or the top 100, the athletes themselves.
Right. And Andy coming out and doing the awards acceptance for Mahomes. And that was pretty cool. Having Reed be able to do that. And, I know we're talking about the QB position, but I got to say Mahomes is, being Reed watching him and saying one of the things that's best about Patrick is he's a great QB, but he's also a great husband and father. And congrats to them having a third on the way. It's great to see a guy like that be the leader of your franchise and the leader of this team for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Hey, it's not like he doesn't have enough going on, right?
Right.
Between all the events this summer, now you're having a kid, you got the F1 thing. It's everywhere, just like we are. So if you are finding us for the first time on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. You can also get us on the audio platforms at Spotify, at Apple Music, and everywhere that you can get a free show every day, you can get us. Plus, we do put out breaking news, anything that we find out ahead of schedule on the text line at 816-357-8781. You'll get custom content there as well. And the difference between doing all those things and still being elite at the one thing that you do that is your persona in being the league's top quarterback, I think is something that teams around the league take for granted. Even our discussions, if you go back to the Locked On Network, the Draft Dudes put out their rankings. They cover from an NFL perspective, Mahomes number one there, Reed's number one there. You're going to find that this is fairly common. The acknowledgement, finally. This has been a discussion for a couple of years. Now it's not much of a discussion. So the question is, for me, I think he can be the season MVP. I think if you're the winning quarterback in a Super Bowl, that makes things easy. But I'm not sure they're going to let him be the season MVP again. I think at this point, I feel like, especially the voters, the lead beat writer from around the country is actually rooting against him being the MVP at this point because of all the accolades. So I'm not sure that he gets it this season. Even if he does approach some of the stats that we'll talk about later, that we know he needs to in order to argue for that. Am I making a mountain out of a hill here?
No, sports media wants to talk about who is the newest superstar. Everybody's talking about the QB in Houston, and CJ Stroud is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that they want somebody else to talk about. I don't think that they want Mahomes to talk about anymore. I think that that's something that they feel has like been played out multiple times, and I get it to an extent. But at the same time, if he's the best QB, he's the best QB, and I don't think that there's much of an argument that could be made that he isn't the best QB in football, and he hasn't been for the last couple of seasons. Whether or not he's MVP, I mean, yeah, you can always argue. And if you're looking just at stats, you're just looking at the different things that those are able to tell you. I guess you can look at it and say, okay, well, maybe he wasn't as good last year as he has been in the past. But, this year he has a chance. If he goes out and throws for 5,500 yards and 45 touchdowns or more than 40 touchdowns, he should win the MVP, and it shouldn't be close because nobody else is going to hit that. And I know that sounds
I can't
ridiculous to get, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Well, and that's what it comes down to, is what's possible versus plausible versus what's likely. And when you look back and you take a look at last season and what it represented in the thinness at wide receiver overall, in what is, I think, for the statistical evaluation, probably more pertinent than we've ever led on. To hear Brett Coleman, if you guys follow him, talk about it, we all counted him out. We thought that there's not enough weapons on this team to get him there, and yet he still gets it done. So I don't think that those are hard barriers at this point. I think knowing that his situation changes from year to year to year, I think that's something that they have to take into account. So the question becomes, what can he do?
When you put better weapons around him, I think that it's going to be even more fun to watch. And you look at Hollywood Brown, he is easily, I think, probably the best wide receiver they've had since Tyreek Hill. I don't think that there's much of a question on that. And he steps into that number one role. We're still waiting to find out whether or not Rashee Rice is going to be suspended this year. That's going to play into how this works with Mahomes and his MVP chances, because if Rice is available and you have Rice and Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, add in a guy like Travis Kelce, add in a guy like Jared Wiley and Noah Gray. I mean, there's all these different guys that are going to play huge parts in giving him a chance to be MVP. And if you put them all together on the field for 17 games, even if some of them are only playing for 10 games because of injuries, you're still going to be in a much better position than you've been in the past several seasons.
Yeah, you are not wrong. And the question then is, how much does that lift him? What does it look like? Don't miss tomorrow, folks, when we're running down our pre-camp 53-man roster projection as it stands right now. That is tomorrow. You don't want to miss that. You're not going to like what I have to say, but that's all right. We're all going to be good, and we're going to run it down just before cuts as well after we see what develops in camp. But part of that question is, how do you support Mahomes the best? That comes down to how many guys are in the room, and that's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Summer's in full swing, and we're getting ready for football season. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to go to MLB right now and go see the Royals, or you're waiting on your preseason tickets, your Chiefs tickets for the regular season, or even those cold, snowy days. The best way to get it done is Game Time. It helps if you can plan. I fully admit that, but sometimes you just can't. And so last-minute deals are exactly what you're looking for, whether it's the section of the stadium that you want, whether it's the seat exactly that you want, or whether you're just looking for that last-minute super saver. You can save up to 60% on tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, anything at Game Time. This is really important. I sit in one section of Arrowhead, and I really love it. It's a zone deal. And when that comes up, I try to go all in because they give you all in pricing with no hidden fees. It takes the guesswork. I'm getting tickets for Arrowhead, but for baseball as well. You can get it all at Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create your account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply, but it's super simple. Create an account. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL and you're going to get $20 off of your first ticket purchase. So download it today. It's last-minute tickets. It's lowest prices, and they are always guaranteed. If you are tired of having to turn down the volume on Fox Sports or ESPN or whatever you have going during the day, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's free. It's everywhere here on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV. And it's 24/7 of all the top stories with our hosts that give you can't miss analysis, opinion, and the news, all streaming whenever you need it. It's Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Now, I will say this. There is always a discussion about how much support do you need in the room for Patrick Mahomes, given his uniqueness, and given that it is he and Andy Reid that have to play off of each other. He's not the Peyton Manning type, assign each quarterback in the room something to go study so they can all help him. But there is support needed there. There is wisdom needed there, although every season that goes by, it's less and less. This year, the room definitely feels different. Now, as we understand, last year, there was interest in bringing in Carson Wentz. That didn't materialize for whatever reason. Carson was, I do believe, still looking for a starting role, and I can't blame him for that. But Flash forward to now, a year later, he is the backup. And I think with his volume of expertise and his ability to still play the game, for a backup, he's fairly young for a Reid backup, to tell you the truth. So it feels to me like, no offense to Chris Oludekun or Ian Book or anybody else that they might bring in to throw some passes around the camp, this is a two-man race, right?
Yeah, no, I would say it's absolutely a two-man race. I don't think that there's anybody. I don't think that Wentz is going to be anything other than the only backup that they keep on the roster. And we'll get it, like you said, we'll get into the roster predictions tomorrow. But I mean, I'll just say it today. Mahomes and Wentz are the only two QBs I got on my roster because I can't see that they're going to be going a different direction. You talk about Oladokun, and I think that that's a scenario. I love what I've read about him talking into the media and talking about how, he really appreciated what Mike Tomlin did for him because he gave him a chance to go and catch on somewhere else. When it was obvious he wasn't going to be sticking in Pittsburgh, he gave him a chance to go catch on somewhere else. And while he's not been on the roster in Kansas City, he has been more important than you would think, probably, than most people would think, because as the third QB, he is the scout QB. He is getting the defense ready for the incoming offense. And even more so than that, think about some of the players that he would have to imitate. Lamar Jackson in particular. I mean, it's just all sorts of those types of things. When you look at how important that position is, I don't think that there's any possible way they keep three, because I don't think that Oladokun is going to get picked up by somebody else. I don't feel like they feel he's going to be picked up by somebody else. It's possible that maybe he shows out in the preseason and somebody likes it and they pick him up. In which case, I think they'd be they wouldn't appreciate it, and they'd probably bring back Ian Book as their practice squad QB. But I think that Oladokun is going to be their guy on the practice squad, and I think he's going to stick in Kansas City for the next couple of years. He seems to love it here, and why wouldn't you? You want to play. Yeah, you want to be a starting QB in the NFL. I get it, but he's in a position where he is getting paid to be the third string QB to back up Patrick Mahomes, and has now a couple of Super Bowl rings because he's been backing up Patrick Mahomes. And I know we should be talking about Carson Wentz, but the reality is that Oladokun is, I mean, there is no question Wentz is going to be the backup. There's no question about that.
And that's not a reflection. We'll talk more in depth about Wentz in the next segment, because he is the depth as far as what this is. But as you said, keeping more than two is not economical. And we're going to talk all about the ramifications tomorrow. But in the end, it's a tough spot for Oladokun, however we're supposed to say his name, because I've never heard him correct.
Oladokun.
My apologies, Chris.
Matt saying yes.
But I'm glad that he likes it, because it's very difficult when you have possibly the greatest player to ever play the position in front of you to ever really break in. So in taking that experience in running scout team again this season, I think that's still a service to the quarterback room. It helps Patrick Mahomes. It helps the team. And in the end, gives him a better view. It will come to an end eventually where I think someone will need a backup, where I think Chris will be tradable for somebody who has a catastrophic injury to their starter or something like that because of being on a championship team. And Ian Book, obviously not in the same situation, but someone else who can then learn from it. And then you have the heir apparent to the practice squad role. Not the same athlete. So can't offer you as many looks on the scout team as you would like. So it is very much, I think, somebody to be appreciated right now.
Which is also why I would say that Book is a guy that probably isn't going to be somebody that they would like to keep if Oladokun went somewhere else. I think that if you are looking for, I think he's a camp arm. I hate saying it that way because you hate saying that people are just camp players, but I think that's the reality. I think he's a camp arm. I think that you look at the Chiefs; they've had 4 or 5 QBs in there, at training camp most of the time that Reed has been here, and that is the reality. And this is a situation where if Oladokun is picked up by somebody else, I think they'd look elsewhere because I think they're going to want somebody that can give them at least somebody that can somewhat mimic Jackson. You're never going to find another Lamar Jackson that you can put on the practice squad. That's obvious. But you can get somebody that has the ability to do stuff like him that makes it easier to practice and get ready for a guy like Lamar Jackson. And that's just one example. He's done it with all the other QBs that they've faced. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just about mobility either. It's about understanding and executing various offenses that are not the Chiefs. So he's got to be a student. He's got to be a studier of a game, not just the other quarterbacks. And I think that's important. But that's one role. Next, we need to get into the depth about what the changes are. Should Carson Wentz have to take over Patrick Mahomes for a game or two, or if it's just the last game of the season as you go into the playoffs, whatever that happens to be, what does the depth look like and what are the differences? That's on the backside of this here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you ever found yourself comparing yourself and comparing your life to others, looking on social media and comparing your life to what you see other people doing, whether it's on vacation or the job that they have or the amount of money they make? Does social media play a part in that? What do you do when you get caught up wishing for your life looked like somebody else's? There's lots of different things that go into that. Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
Do not forget, make the most and check out Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 feed here on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV. I think making this about Carson Wentz is a little bit false for a lot of folks that are looking for a storyline. Yes, it's a drastic change. I think the difference between Blaine Gabbert and Carson Wentz is probably, if not more than it was between Chad Henne and anyone that has backed up Patrick to this point. I think the most accomplished player is likely now Carson Wentz to back up Patrick in his career. What does that do for what you try to use that player as? Does that change your philosophy if you're Andy Reid?
I don't know that it really changes your philosophy. I think that you have to look at the amount of games that all these players have played and what they're able to do as a player, what they're able to come through and show on your team. I think that there's a lot of, you look at what Carson Wentz went through in his career. He's been injured at times, and obviously that plays into his availability. I was just looking, I was trying to pull up. Carson Wentz actually has played in 95 games in his career. Chad Henne played in 78. So there you go. I mean, he had a lot more games. He had, 15, 16, 17 more games than, I guess, almost 19 more games than Henne. So he's got more starting experience. Right. He's got more game experience. Now, does it make him a better backup? Which is a weird question to ask. But you start looking at what this is going to mean for Patrick. And, Patrick and Tini, I'm sure, had a very close relationship. There's not a lot of information that we ever got from that, but you could tell that they seem to be very close. And the question is can Carson step in and have a very close relationship with Carson Wentz and Patrick Mahomes? And it does matter because those two guys, while Wentz isn't going to be challenging Mahomes anytime soon, and we all know that, Wentz still needs to be a guy that can, push Patrick in some ways. It's not going to be pushing him to play, but it's pushing him to get better in different areas. And Mahomes obviously is improving in every sense of the word. Every year he picks one thing that he wants to focus on and improve on. But you also have to, it's also part of the mental game, and it's a challenge to continue to stay ahead of the mental game, no matter how long you've been playing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the interesting thing to me is these guys, despite what it feels like, are only less than 3 years apart in age. And that's intriguing to me. Carson Wentz is just, his birthday's one of the last days of December, just turned 31. So well within the parameters of a franchise quarterback's career, he is still there. Now, obviously, he's had his struggles, but I think that the key thing for me is that he's closer to Patrick's age than any other backup he's ever had. And those years spent with Doug Peterson, I think, lend it to him embracing this system. And yes, Patrick's going to do things that he can't do. Yeah. Patrick's always going to be Patrick, and he's going to do things that Carson Wentz cannot physically accomplish. But in terms of having someone that can walk into a situation, understand the calls, understand the concepts, and what the offense is trying to do, this may be the best match they've ever had as a backup because of the Super Bowl run, because of the time with Doug Peterson. I know Nick Foles finished off that season, but Carson Wentz was there and was the starter designate at that point. So I think that symbolism, whether it's on the play call sheet or whether it's what you're doing on the field, I think that recognition is going to be significant. And it feels like this might be the tighter duo, at least with performance on the field, if and when he ever had to take the field. Maybe more so than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah. And looking back at, if you go back and look at Blaine Gabbert and Chad Henne and Carson Wentz has almost double the amount of starts that either of those two guys had. Not quite double, but really close to double on both of them. 93 career starts for Carson Wentz. And while maybe he wasn't a great QB the past couple of seasons, obviously, he was a backup and all that. I get all that. But having that starting experience is different. And it sets him in a different position than what they've had. And it's more experience. And, you make a great point. And I know you already kind of went through this, but knowing the system, knowing that he has played in an Andy Reid system, obviously Peterson had something that was a little bit different, but knowing he's played in an Andy Reid system is going to make it easier for him to step into this and be more of a guy that can step in and be successful if he has to. And obviously we hope that he never has to play, or if he's playing in blowouts. I mean, there's possibility there too.
Yeah, that's all. I would like to see that this year, Andy. Can we keep the gas pedal down a little bit more? I say it every year and he never listens to me. So Coach, if you're listening, come on.
Or if, the Chiefs secure the number one seed by week 16 or 17, maybe Carson Wentz gets a couple of starts at the end of the season. I'd be okay with that too.
I can get by with that as well. That's going to be fun.
You think you feel good with that?
So, yeah, I think I'd be very happy with that concept.
Yeah.
I think what's really going to be interesting, and the last point about Carson Wentz and what he's able to do is, again, because of the system experience, not just good arm strength, obviously not Patrick Mahomes' arm strength, that's okay. But the other thing that I feel is a topic that we're going to talk about tomorrow as we run down our initial pre-camp 53-man roster projection. Don't miss tomorrow's show, folks. And then we move into report day for the rookies and quarterbacks. We're going to have it all for you all week long because we are 5 days a week. Plus, we'll have any breaking news for you as additional content. So make sure you're subscribed on all the platforms, whether it's here on YouTube or on Spotify and Apple Music. The other interesting thing that's going to happen,
I was just going to say, we will have more once training camp
Hollywood Brown. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing outside of Hollywood Brown, who you mentioned earlier, this receiving core is young all the way around. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like the guys that are taking second team reps or might be on scout team that are going to be working with Carson Wentz, not just during training camp, but during the season, I feel like they have maybe a little bit better feel, a little bit better synergy with what they're going to see when they work with the ones, if they're pressed into action, if somebody gets hurt and they have to take over. I feel like the ramp up to playing with the first team offense is going to be that much more beneficial playing with Wentz than it was with someone else who had to learn the system fresh and cold, for a matter of a better term.
Yeah, and I know this is not this kind of goes with what you're saying. It's not what you were saying, but the other part of it is that you go back and look at OTAs. Some of the young guys were getting first string snaps with Patrick Mahomes because of guys being out. So, I mean, they're already getting some of those reps. That's going to help them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, tomorrow is the big show. I'm excited for it. We are not going to agree. We rarely do when it's this point in the season. We're a little closer generally when it comes down to the 53-man cutdown. But this is going to be our first look at your 2024 53-man roster, our predictions, what we feel like is most likely to happen right now. Don't miss tomorrow. Make sure you like, sub, hit the bell. Thank you for being with us today. It's always a lot of fun. This week is always hold your breath and get ready for it to go, because it is just about launch date for your training camp for the Kansas City Chiefs in their three-peat run. Remember, that's the overall goal. We'll talk about that later in the week. Thanks for being with us today. We will definitely talk to you tomorrow.